Congressman, 5th District, Southside, Virginia, Republican Robert Hurt. Congressman, great to have you back, sir.
Thanks, John, so much for having me on your program.
Now, what do you think of this situation in Dallas where we've got the 2 apparent jihadists gunned down by law enforcement agents? Apparently they were trying to maim or kill people. ISIS claiming responsibility, but we have no evidence of it. What do you make of the whole thing, sir?
Well, I guess first of all, I salute the officers and the local police department there that was obviously prepared for this and took nothing for granted. And fortunately, no innocent people were killed. And of course, it points up the danger that we're dealing with, and really the existential threat that we face with ISIS and this radical strain of Islam that causes people to do these things. And so I think that it means we have to redouble our efforts and our strategy in the Middle East. Ever since September 11th, I think we have recognized as a nation that it's better to defeat these people abroad than it is to have them coming into our shores, and here we are. I think it also speaks to our immigration issue and the fact that we have got to secure our borders, and granted it doesn't look at this early stage that was an issue here, but it certainly could be, and we have got to deal with that. So and then on the big picture with this president, I do think also we have to be careful, or not be careful. We have to be resolute in the face of evil. We can't be dilly-dallying around and trying to be politically correct at a time when we have to stand strong, resolute, and we have to lead. And unfortunately, I think this president has ceded that leadership, especially in the Middle East, and as a consequence, you're not going to defeat evil, I don't think, in that way. And so I think that those are the 3 lessons that I take away from this.
Now, Congressman, shouldn't people be concerned after what happened with this potential terrorist attack that we have a situation in Texas and Arizona where virtually anybody can come into the United States from Mexico unfettered? I mean, every time I talk to people, ranchers that are down there, they say that thousands of people per day just walk over. They're not apprehended by anybody, and they just assimilate into the United States. I mean, it's almost mind-boggling when you talk to the people down there. When you see something like we saw in Garland, Texas, wouldn't somebody say, this has got to be a real issue, a problem?
Absolutely. And I think that what we have seen in Washington over the last 4 years that I have been there has been the House Republicans very, very committed to solving the border crisis, very committed to shutting the border down, and which I think is absolutely possible. There are a lot of people in Washington who like to think that can't be done. Of course it can be done, and it must be done. But what happens is the entire what we need to do, and what I think that be bipartisan support to do, gets hijacked by those who want to make the debate about something else, and make it about a debate that there's very little agreement on in Washington, and I think that's where it is irresponsible on the part of those who refuse to recognize that there's bipartisan support for securing the border. We need to do that first and foremost before we talk about anything else. Now, we have a new majority in the Senate, but as you know, as we have seen in frustration, that doesn't mean that we're going to be able to run the tables over there. You still have to find 6 Democrats, and of course the president has been recalcitrant on this issue from the very get-go. And but I do think your point is exactly right. We have got to this should be one more wake-up call that we have got to seal that border.
Now, there's some people that have criticized the event organizer, Congressman Hurd, Pamela Geller, for putting the event on, saying, look, you put this on, it's only going to draw some sort of a response that puts people at risk. Do you think that even putting the thing on, was that the right thing to do or too risky?
Good grief! I mean, this is this is a land of freedom, and the idea that someone would be would in any way, shape, or form try to justify or explain away what happened as anything other than an act of terror designed to terrorize and is I think is just ridiculous. I mean, the idea that you would in any way justify this or blame anybody other than the two men that got killed, thankfully, mercifully, before dozens, if not hundreds, had been innocent people had been murdered. So I just reject that out of hand.
The House passing a budget finally. It's now going to go to the Senate. What happens now?
Well, so now we have a spending blueprint for the next fiscal year, which begins in October, and that is the first time in 14 years that the House and the Senate have gotten together and actually acted responsibly. And for the 4 years that I've been here, we have sent our budget over, and with the exception of one on one occasion, which we forced their hand by making the penalty for not producing a budget that they wouldn't get paid. Except for that one time, the Senate hasn't produced any budget, and even when it did that year, we were unable to come to an agreement on it and have a final conference report, which we did in this occasion. So, I think it's good news. I think we have to be careful congratulating ourselves too much, because obviously it's just it's what Congress should do, and it should have done every year for the last 14 years. But the point is this gives us a spending blueprint, and then the appropriations bills will work through, hopefully through regular order, where we'll have a full and fair and robust debate on the spending priorities for this country. And so I think it's a really a good step in the right direction, and I think it shows that Republicans anyway are serious about getting down to business.
Making the sausage in the Senate. Are they going to have to act on it? Have something of themselves? Reconcile it?
Yes. Yeah. So what's happened is they adopted their own budget, and we adopted our budget, and so since we've come together on a conference report, which we voted on last week, that really is that's really the end of it. I mean, but it sets the benchmark for spending for the next next year, the next fiscal year, and frankly, there's some things in there that they took out Paul Ryan's plan to reform Medicare, which I voted for every single year because it's so daggone important. But that didn't make it through the conference report. I was sorry to see that, but at the end of the day, I still felt like it was because of what it represents and the game plan that it sets out for the next fiscal year, that it was worthy of my support. And the good thing, and I think a lot of probably your listeners don't appreciate this, but the thing about the budget is, of course, it's a resolution, so it's just adopted by the House and the Senate together, and then it doesn't go to the president. So the president's, he just stands by and watches. And the other thing it does, John, and this is as important as anything, is it puts us back in the driver's seat for spending. We always hear people say, well, Congress has the power of the purse, and that's true, but it doesn't mean that it has the end. It is the end-all, be-all. What it means is the spending bills start in the House, and then the second thing it means is if you have a budget and you have those spending bills then the spending bills, they're going to be they're going to reflect our priorities, Congress's priorities, as opposed to doing these terrible continuing resolutions that we've done over and over again that basically give all the spending power to the president, because what it does is it just continues what the president had before, and we basically are sitting on the sidelines. So it's extremely important from an institutional standpoint, if you care about separation of powers and having Congress use its power versus the president.
And President Obama can't do anything. I mean,
not on the budget.
Not on the budget now,
but ultimately, he will be in a position to negotiate on the final spending, on the spending bills, the ultimate spending bill that comes out of all of the work that we do between now and September 30, and he's going to have a say in that because he's got to sign it, and so we'll have to be prepared for that. But it's my hope that with the House and Senate budget being adopted, that we're going to send strong appropriations bills that set the correct priorities and and savings and reform. I'm hoping that in the next, between now and September 30, that we're going to send to the president as strong a package as we can send, and that puts us in a much stronger position to negotiate with him, because obviously his priorities are completely different in many ways, so much different than ours.
Now, staying with domestic policy, Obama's TPA, fast-track trade, a lot of conservatives are split on it. I don't want anything to do with it. How do you stand on two things? Fast-track trade authority, Congressman, and then the Trans-Pacific Partnership Bill.
Yep. Well, and I respect your position on it, and I have a lot of friends on both sides of it. I haven't come to a decision about exactly what I'll do yet. Obviously, I think the devil's in the details, and we're still working through all that. But I will say this: coming from an area that was very hard hit, in part, not totally, but in part by trade agreements that were not in our best interest. And we know the story of Southside Virginia and northern North Carolina and the manufacturing base that does not exist anymore.
Right.
Has been diminished significantly. With all of that said, I do think that generally speaking, we want to open up for our manufacturers, for our agricultural producers, and of course agriculture is the largest sector, and forestry is the largest sector of our Virginia economy and the 5th District economy. If we're able to open up new avenues for customers across the sea, then I think that we ought to look for ways to do that. That doesn't mean that we approve any final deal, but I think that we ought to at least look at that, because I think it really does amount to significant jobs and significant production. And if you just look at in the 5th District and Virginia generally, you look at the growth that we've seen in our agricultural exports, particularly, it's exciting, and it really does create jobs. So it's not an easy issue at all. And then on the Trade Promotion Authority, that's one where we have given the president this authority in the past, and it only expired in the last 10 years. But we've given the president the authority not to close the deal, but just to negotiate the deal. And while I from what I have seen, it looks like to me that there are a lot of protections that are put in there to make sure that this president doesn't misuse that authority. And at the end of the day, if we don't like it, we vote it down. So anyway, that's sort of where I am in my thinking on it.
Okay, so it sounds like you're inclined to provide the executive branch. Let's take Obama out of the equation for a second. Provide the executive branch with continuing fast-track trade authority. And that makes sense on the surface. But then the reality is President Obama, he occupies that office right now.
Yep.
I think it
No,
would
I
be.
got it.
I think it would be a tough argument to say that he's negotiated anything well.
Right. No, I listen. I understand that, and that's a reservation. That's absolutely a reservation I have, John. And that's something that I have to work through, because he has proven again and again that he will exceed authority given him, and so that's something that we have to work through.
Yeah, that seems to be a trend. I've got a minute and a half. I want to get your thoughts. While you were in Washington and in your office going about your work, and you guys saw what was going on in Maryland, the riots, the automobiles being overturned, set fire to, CVS burned down. What's been the general reaction there?
Well, I think it's just a massive tragedy, and it's hard to again, talking about the thing in Dallas or in Texas, there's no justification for it, and to those who try to justify it or blame folks, listen, if those officers murdered that man, then they need to be held accountable, and and their punishment needs to reflect the fact that we put we give police a special place in our society because they are willing to sacrifice their lives every time they put on the uniform. So I feel very strongly that if that young man was killed unlawfully, that they need to be held to account. But in terms of the property destruction and the absolute chaos, we watched the thin veil of sort of civilization pulled back, and we watched this total breakdown of the rule of law. Every one of those people need to be prosecuted and brought to justice. And the idea that anybody, especially an elected official, would stand up and suggest in any way, shape, or form that any of that was justified, and any of that should be anything other than punished to the full extent of the law, I think is wrong, and I think that it does not serve ultimately the people well. And I've also been asked about whether or not I think that there's a federal role. I don't see any federal role at all in this. It seems to me that I think that when you look at the way our government was set up in the very beginning, I think the last thing our founders would want would be some sort of a federalized police state, and that's not what we want. These are local government issues. The police, the law enforcement needs to be, at its most basic level, a local function, and so I see very little role for Congress, if any.
Yeah, I don't think we need any federalization of any law enforcement at all. We're out of time. We want to thank Robert Hurt for being with us.